Welcome aboard the dopamine train, where our ADHD-powered locomotive stops at every shiny thought along the tracks. I'm Obee Won, and with my co-host Rome, we explore various topics and see where the conversation train takes us.
All right, so we are back today with another episode. Obee Won and I are going to be discussing some of the aspects of privacy that I've been nerding out about recently, and I know this is something that you've taken interest in the past. We've mentioned it briefly on the show. So I have some thoughts that I wanted to share to get us started, but I'll just ask you first if there are any things that come to mind immediately. Like what's the first thing that you consider when it comes to either securing your online accounts or making them private?
Great question, great topic, Rome. It's actually privacy, not privacy.
Oh, my bad.
No, just like from Assassin's Creed 3, where it's like privacy, and you find out the Knights Templar is actually the dad of the assassin, right?
He said, oh, that's right. He says that.
He says privacy. That's that ADHD brain coming back from way beyond the arc of 2016 Assassin's Creed.
I think it was 2012, actually.
2012? Oh, God.
I just remember because I went through a bad breakup right when that game was out. So
right. So
ingrained
privacy.
Yeah.
So privacy, there's a lot of different things. I think it is the biggest threat to that governments are going against and not respecting privacy, and it's due to technology and the advancements of that, AI and the way we can monitor it, how for at least the last 10 years have been giving up information for free via social media, not even realizing that it's not private and such. I was reading actually before we started doing a little research that the Library of Congress is now copying all public Twitter posts starting from 2006 to be archived at the Library of Congress, which I found very interesting because that's like somebody's livelihood or non-livelihood or their innermost thoughts and just plain old venting. And from a historical perspective, it's really cool, right? Because we're getting this like first source journal material in a sense, but also at the same time, like, is it necessary to violate that person's privacy or to make their stuff public? So there's a lot of different avenues we can talk about this today, Rome. I think the big thing first is, what is privacy? I think back to your first question, and I would say privacy to me is the ability to go out in public and not have to worry about your self being shared, or what information that you want shared is being shared, and you're at the end of the day the gatekeeper of that information. What are your thoughts on that, Rome?
That's interesting because I have a similar idea, but when it comes to public spaces, I guess I always had the expectation that there was a chance that you could be recorded either by another person, or if we're talking about security cameras, by external entities, companies, governments, whatever. And so I look at it, I guess, more through the lens of how can I safeguard the sensitive information, the things that I explicitly don't want out there. And, there's lots of bad actors that are trying to access those things. And I guess if we talk about one of the major ones, or one of the easy targets, if we look at Google, they do a lot to create as many profiles on people as possible because their whole MO is to be able to create ads, which to me seems more invasive than if I went out to a Starbucks and someone started recording me. It'd be kind of annoying, but there's also an expectation that you're your public facing version is present there. But
Right.
it sounds like your idea is you want to be able to control the output of that data no matter where you are, whether you're in public or in private, obviously. So that's
Right.
something that I hadn't thought of it as.
Right. And it comes back to like even more online, right? What you're posting online will be there forever, and it is free real estate, as they say. At some points,
It's
depending
free
on
real estate.
free real estate, baby. Reference to that old godforsaken meme. When it comes back to that of what you're posting online, how that can get interpreted and get used. That's where I find those arguments interesting about free speech and social media. Because what is Facebook? A private company. And you are posting on their private platform. And so, by that alone, the speech that you are putting out on their site is not free. It could be the vehicle, but at the end of the day, it's their platform. I know some people will say, well, it's social media, it's about speech and whatnot. At the end of the day, it's a private company. They get to dictate how their platform is. It's like if you entered somebody's house, right? And you decided to profess profanities or things of that sort, started an argument. That person has a right to kick you out of their house, right?
Or it's like going into a club, I would say, if there's multiple people there. You know, the club
Comes
is
down to
owned
private
by
property.
by a specific business, and these people are given access to it so that they can share information with they're in there socializing, and if you act a certain type of way, you get kicked out. Which I suppose
Right.
that's how Facebook operates anyway. But the idea, so it would essentially be like profiling everyone inside a venue and saying
Correct.
we need all this data.
Correct. Good or for better or for worse, the profiling. I think it's a little bit of the latter personally, but I'm a very much a like negative person, negative Nancy when it comes to technology and people invading that privacy. But going back to what you said about like there's no privacy expected in public. And it's interesting, right? So if you're out in public, say so and so is on a public sidewalk and they're recording on that sidewalk. Everything captured via that sidewalk within that site is not private. Even if it is your house from the public sidewalk, that is not, if I can view it through my naked eye or through a lens from that sidewalk, it is privacy has gone out the window, which I found very interesting because you have a lot of these YouTubers that are out there doing that same sort of thing in terms of like pushing government like regulations when it comes to recording in public buildings. So like in town halls are technically public spaces. You're allowed to record in there. And a lot of the time you have an authoritative figure such as a manager or a police officer at times that is like, no, you can't record in here. But it is that expectation of privacy doesn't matter in a public space and therefore I can record. So getting back to where you're saying like even at a Starbucks, right? Technically if they're in the Starbucks recording, private properties in play.
Yeah.
But if they're from the sidewalk and recording, technically that is public space.
For sure.
Which I find very fascinating. Is like location of where you're recording determines whether it's private or not, or have the expectation of privacy.
This is a bit of an aside, but you just reminded me of the Streisand effect. Have you heard of that?
Oh, explain it for our audience.
So
I know what it is, but
so
go ahead.
I think the way the story went is there were some photos that were taken of Barbara Streisand's residence, and no one really cared. Like it wasn't a big deal, but she made a big deal about it. I think she was planning to sue the photographer, and so it got into the media, and it became such a big deal that suddenly everyone was interested in Barbara Streisand's residence. So her whole concept basically, or her whole plan backfired because she was trying to ding someone for making her location known, and she ended up revealing it to even more people. So this is something that's actually happened recently too with YouTube, where
Really?
they have started removing. So, are you familiar with Linus Tech Tips?
No, but explain it for our audience
So,
regardless.
so Linus is a YouTuber who makes content about tech. So, yeah, like computers and anything related to tech. And he did an entire series called De-Googling Your Life, like how to get rid of Google applications. And YouTube actually took down his second video in the series. And mind
Wow.
you, he's been on the platform for I think over 15 years, and he's never had a video taken down.
Wow.
So then you can now find a whole bunch of copies of that video posted by random channels because YouTube basically pulled the Streisand effect and removed a video that a lot of people probably thought hilariously. It's ironic that you have a YouTube video about de-googling your life, but the fact that they
Right.
took it off just drew even more attention to it.
Interesting. It's kind of this is super out of left field, but it's kind of the potato in Prussia. Have you heard of that story?
No.
So, potato, new world food, brought into Prussia, which would eventually become modern day Germany. Uh, Lord was like, "Hey, you guys should grow potatoes." Public's like, "No, this is a uh, ugly thing. Doesn't taste that great. Don't want it." So what they ended up doing is he put it in the royal garden and told his guards to not guard it as well. And so now a vegetable that is now not deemed worthy enough for the peasantry, now peasants want it. Peasants went into the garden, started taking potatoes, and in a sense got manipulated by this king. And so bringing it back to this is if you just would have left it up, probably would some people would have been interested in it.
Oh yeah, there are a
But
lot of people interested.
but now since you removed it and saying in a sense you're not good enough for this info, now the peasantry and the masses want it.
Actually, this is an interesting contrast to what we were talking about a second ago, because you could argue that Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, they're all private platforms. So
They are.
YouTube has every right to remove a video that it feels falls outside of its terms of service. But, you know, how do you draw the line between people are posting on a public platform, so we should record it, and this is a private platform, so they can remove things however they want, but that's censorship.
Right.
We're in a weird balance here.
That is a very weird balance. I would argue that YouTube was in their right to do so because it is a private platform and you sign that terms and conditions checkmark that nobody reads at the beginning. Probably includes something of that sort. But they're referencing our last podcast show where we talked about intention versus impact. Their intention was to remove the content so that that users would not have access to the information. But the impact was that now people want the more information more and more to de-Googlify their life, and in a sense still didn't get what they wanted at the end of the day. So that's where I find it, since you're a private platform, it's kind of like weighing out those thoughts. Would it be more damaging for them to remove that content or just to simply left it up? And I think if I was in their shoes, I would have left it up.
Yeah.
Personally, because I think then it would have died off eventually, versus if you are showing the public that, oh, this is not allowed, it is just adding more fuel to the fire of,
No doubt.
oh,
Yeah.
it's us versus the big man mentality. And we in America, we love an underdog. Period. From Rudy
good storytelling.
good storytelling from Rudy to any Miracle, that sports movie about the hockey team that did well in Lake Placid against the communist Russian team. So
Every time I hear Lake Placid, I just think of the killer alligator movie.
What? What is this killer alligator movie?
I don't know. I haven't seen. I just saw a posted. I think it's called Lake Placid. So
interesting. I wonder if it's the Spider-Man villain Croc.
I think it's like a Jaws type movie, but with a crocodile.
And I just don't know. As someone who lives in New York, I don't know how the croc would survive winter, man. So we don't have reptiles up here for a reason.
It's an anomaly.
We have those
like
velociraptors, but that's about it.
You guys have dinosaurs?
Yeah, birds.
Oh, okay. So they've been in disguise. Did you know that? See now. We've just discredited everything we've said with conspiracy theory speak. Did you know that COVID was a plan to change out the batteries in the bird drones?
Oh my god! Because they're trying to violate our privacy.
Yeah. Well, they've been running these birds for decades, and so they needed a bit of a recharge. So they had to do a whole, it's a giant cover up.
It never ceases to amaze me what the imagination of the human mind will come up with next.
To be fair, it wasn't my imagination. That was one of my coworkers coming up with some goofy story. Right. So I'll credit his imagination. But one of the things I wanted to ask, so we've discussed sort of the overview or the atmosphere of privacy security online today. That's another thing too. So I think that the privacy element is one thing. Another has nothing to do necessarily with big tech, but just day-to-day good habits that people should have when it comes to online accounts. I'm talking like having not the same password on every platform, or using 2FA, which we'll get to in a second. But first, I wanted to ask you in regards to privacy, are there any particular steps that you've taken or that you recommend when you are trying to take back some modicum of privacy, as it were?
Depends on the realm. I would say for the internet and public-facing things is do a little search on yourself and see what pops up, right? Because that's the main vehicle of which people will look you up is through a search engine. See what pops up. Are those things that you want so-and-so from Jamestown, New York to know about you? If the answer is yes, then I think you're fine and continue about your business and enjoy your day. But if there's certain things that are not what you want so-and-so from Jamestown, New York to know, then first step is to maybe change those accounts to something like an autonomous name or something. The big thing that I noticed, especially in the early 2010s and up until 2016, is people would put their name plus their middle name and scratch out the last name. That was a big push that I noticed. And I was like, well, that's great and all, but if they have your legal name, I don't kind of see how it's going to work out for you. Great try, but at the same time, depends on how in depth of knowledge they have about you. But I would say is the first step is like changing your name and how you are identified on certain social media. So when someone types in your stuff, it only pops up that thing. So like for myself, my Facebook name is not related to my legal name at all. But I did that years ago when I was younger, in like a little bit of fear mongering from teachers to personally just wanting to be anonymous when it came to online interactions, just in case of something going wrong. And so my LinkedIn pops up, but nothing else. And then there was this one Twitter account that I found that I had deactivated a long time ago that some girl in my freshman year in college made of me, and it was very strange. I don't know why they did it. Like a kind of a fake sort of thing. But that's what I would say is the first thing is changing the names on your accounts that are public facing that you don't want the public to see.
That's actually not a bad piece of, especially with the accounts that you can't get rid of. So there's this really cool site called Just Delete Me, which to distinguish from, there's Delete Me, which is a service that does exactly what you're talking about. They go through all of the white pages and databases and remove your information that you don't want to be shared. But Just Delete Me is a website that will tell you the difficulty level of deleting your account on most major popular sites. So
Wow.
that is a neat tool. And in the event that you can't delete yourself, which that is the case in a lot, it still baffles me that I can't change my email for Escape from Tarkov. Like, it just, I can't move the game to a different one. Anyway, so you can use that that advice that you just gave to just rewrite the information. Like, it doesn't have to be accurate. In fact, you don't even have to come up with it. There's a site called Fake Name Generator that gives you first, last, location, manager, social security. I think you have to sign in to get a social security number generated.
Wow. That's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it'll give you an entirely laid out profile and identity that you can just, plop into accounts if you really want to. I haven't used it. I might, depending on how well organized I get with my different accounts and which ones I figure out I can't get rid of, which have only been a couple so far. But those are a couple tools that are kind of useful. So
interesting. I'm curious on the fake name generator with the social number, because I'm like,
some of those might be taken.
Are we approaching fraud there a little bit? I'm not sure.
Yeah, definitely. Because if you're, it's one thing to change your name on a social site, but if you're going on to, government registrations and changing it, then you're stepping into some murky waters there, buddy.
Right. So I will announce, just for our own safety, we do not condone that. Just Rome and Obee Won do not condone forging.
Yeah, it's just a fun little pastime site you can check out.
Yeah, just like, this could work, maybe.
So you just pulled the Streisand
we do not
effect. Now
support nor condone doing that.
We've now incriminated ourselves.
Right. The FBI is listening.
That's okay. They already. Actually, if you think about that, so this is an argument my mom has always discussed. She goes, if there are so many people to track, and we already know that there isn't enough manpower in the government to properly run the post office. How are they monitoring all of our communication? I'm not saying I don't think they are, but I just don't know how that's even feasible, because there's just too many people to keep track of. I imagine it has to do with some key phrases or key words that get filtered through, right, and that way they can narrow their focus. But do you have any insight or thoughts into how that works?
So I'm going to reference my parental as well. So father worked for Boeing for years and years. He always said that the technology you think we have, and then more. So when I always think of that is, we have AI, we have what's released to the public. I dare not imagine what they have for the government right now. I dare not, because I think it'd be very terrifying, and I think that it would inspire a lot of people to get more politically active, which would be a good thing in my opinion.
For sure.
I find that nowadays everyone's very polarized and not willing to listen to each other, but if we had a united enemy to go after, it would serve us better in getting things changed for the better of humanity in our own living situations.
That definitely accomplishes it more easily or more simply. I'd even argue that you could call the political activism nowadays less political and more just it's like social, or it's posturing, where your opinion on a topic will shift day to day, or your interest in a topic will shift based on the waves of everyone around you sharing online.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think of some stories that happen in the Middle East as an example, where suddenly the American public is heavily invested in it when they weren't before. So there's this strange dissonance between what's happening and people suddenly being knowledgeable about it when they weren't prior,
Right.
and then discarding it not long after it has made its waves in whatever platform you use. So I don't consider that actual politics in my head. I think if you're invested in what's going on and it's something that you're consistently looking at, then that may give a little more credence to one's perspective or opinion. But
Right.
this we've definitely cultivated this. And this is another thing I want to discuss later on, is how certain platforms have done an incredible job of capturing our attention, or capturing my
Right.
attention. Like I'll give
Right.
my anecdotal example of that. And this is extended to all sorts of facets of life, not just how we engage with one another or how we perceive ourselves, but how we perceive the organizations that run our nation. So it's
Exactly.
it's pretty pervasive. The next thing I wanted to talk about, so I like that baseline example you gave about checking your online information and seeing where you're accessible, and then we both gave some tools on how to adjust that.
Right.
But if we go into some specific application types, so
Right.
an easy start, I guess, would be to go through some of the Google apps that we have, because Google makes really, really good applications that a lot of us use, whether that be messaging on Android or it's cloud storage with Google Drive. Have you at any point started to go, hey, I like this service, but I'm going to find an alternative for it? And if so, do you have an alternative to list or anything like that?
For web browsing in particular,
Okay.
as soon as I found out that there was issues with their privacy and incognito mode on
Oh, yeah.
Chrome, I immediately stopped using their service. Personally.
How long ago did you find that out?
As soon as it was big news, I stopped. So I have not used Google Chrome for everything or anything in the last, I would say, 4 years.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a little late to the party on that one. So
Because it forces, it's interesting, right? How Google is like, you log into their Gmail. I encounter this all day at work because my work is Microsoft based, so I keep it all in the same ecosystem. I'll use Edge, even though Edge is a browser,
yeah.
but it plays nice with Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Outlook. It plays nice in the Microsoft ecosystem, so
Of
that's
course.
why I do it. But once I log into, say, a Google account on Microsoft Edge, it will prompt me immediately. Oh, do you want to try this in Google Chrome instead? No.
Yeah.
No, I don't. No, I
Right.
don't want to use Google Chrome.
Or every website wants you to sign in with Google.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some of it's like, it's a convenience thing, right? Because then all your account is tied to Google. So if you open up a new app and you use Google, then it's like all saved and everyone's happy, hunky dory, because you don't have to do this extra account. Or
sure.
you might forget the password or use the same password for everything. And the alternatives that I've used are Firefox. Firefox, I think, is great. It depends on Firefox. If you don't know the history of Firefox, is a for-profit web browser that is used, that people out of the kindness of their hearts update. And you're like, what do you mean? Out of the kindness of their heart? Yes, there are people who volunteer their time to do things still in this world. And Firefox is one of those institutions. They also are, in their network, have a browser called Tor. Tor is amazing because how Tor works is it keeps you anonymous on the web. And it sounds like we're all brand advocates here for these different things, but I'm really a big fan of Tor. Tor, how it was explained to me how it works is this. Imagine we're outside and I want to get to the 7-Eleven on the corner. There are maybe the quickest route to get to 7-Eleven, but there's also the non-quickest route, right? So what happens is the browser says, all right, I'm going to profess to the world that I'm going the quickest route. But in reality, I'm going the other route. So it's kind of like that cartoon where the guy like walks down one way to show footprints and then actually goes the other way and covers up the footprints. That is Tor, in a sense. Highly recommend. It does run slower because of that feature. Just FYI. But if you want to be 100% anonymous, that is the gold standard to me for a browser.
Do you use a VPN?
At work I do. At personal, I don't. Just because of the nature of my living situation.
Yeah.
I've explored VPNs. For the audience, a VPN, do you want to explain what the acronym is for, if you do know?
Virtual private network. So a VPN is, in a very short summary, is it routes your internet traffic through a third party as opposed to your ISP. So anytime you go online, your internet service provider knows typically what sites you're visiting, depending on how you access them. And a VPN gives you that extra layer of privacy if that's something you're concerned about. There's other applications too, like you can access region locked content because it spoofs your location online. I don't have one personally, or I haven't used one. I've been thinking about either investing in a trustworthy one or doing my own through something like WireGuard, which is an open source open VPN thing, but that's kind of a side project for another time. And I was just curious because you mentioned using Tor, and I've heard lots of good things about Tor, but my only experience with it is being a teenager and like, you know, my friend and I laughing about, oh, we're going to go on the dark web, like we're going to scroll, which is why I don't use it as a daily driver, because I've had this fear ingrained in me that I'm going to accidentally click onto a site that isn't on the surface web that's going to get me in trouble. So,
right. But even if you did, right, you'd be the way Tor works is you'd be fine, right? You get what I'm saying? In terms of like you're not honestly doing the web thing. Like if you ever wanted to be even more like OP, don't find me, you add a VPN layer to it, they're not going to find you. Even if you clicked on that like suspect site. Now, granted, if you click on, don't be like
browsing through it and scrolling.
Well, it's like I talked to the older folk. I know we're approaching that middle age, but I'm talking like 55, 50 plus.
Please don't say that. We're approaching that. Jesus Christ.
Approaching.
I am not middle-aged.
Not middle-aged. We're in that awkward age of, are we middle-aged? But anyway, going back to...
Yeah, anyways.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, ahead. I feel like I'm in better shape now than I ever have in my whole life. But that's, you know, anyway, that's my cope.
The big thing is don't click on the pop-ups. The amount of times I have been, why did you do that? Like, why did you click on the ad? This is like no knowledge since I was a child, as in you just don't click on the things in the email are spam. Or trying the funniest ones, as I know my data's been sold, is I'll get these emails in my old school email because I still have access to it. We've stolen your information. We have some naughty photos of you. So and so sent us this to our Bitcoin line. Otherwise, the web will know. And they're like, we even know your password to this site. And I'm like, oh, that's an old password from like, I don't know, 2010. Good luck. And I just delete and move to spam. But that's what I found interesting a little bit as well. Maybe in the future too, we can get one of my good friends who's in the cybersecurity world, has his PhD. Maybe could share with us little tips and tricks of like how to be anonymous on the web in the future as well.
For sure.
Just like we mentioned in a prior episode too, maybe doing a history of social media. Maybe we can do a little series on that of best practices and where we can find privacy in a world that is demanding publicity, in a sense.
I think one of the challenges too is not so much what you and I do to safeguard our information, but it's how easily accessible it is from like I think the worst perpetrator of this is probably the contact list or the contact app where and I didn't think about this most of the time. I just thought my contacts was my convenient little phone book. But there are lots of apps or companies that surf that information. Like if they can't find me online because I didn't share anything, well, then they just need to find me through my closest friends who have added all of my information, my address,
Interesting.
my phone number,
I never thought
all
of it
these
that
things. Yeah, so those are that, and that's why so many apps request access to your contacts. Obviously, it gives you a little bit of added functionality and convenience, but it also gives them access to look at them, so they can build a more thorough profile on you. This is why actually a few weeks ago I went through and I deleted all my contacts. I exported them as a VCF file so that if I needed to go back and reference someone who texted me or called me, I could find their information quickly and know, okay, I'm going to add this person back. But just out of respect to everyone else, I got rid of them off my phone. And with my new phone, it's not an issue because there's no network access to the contacts, but
right, because you picked up the phone to do Linux.
the
Google phone,
the Graphene OS phone.
Interesting.
So yeah, contacts, huge point of they're kind of a privacy nightmare depending on where they're stored, but you can't really control that because people they're adding your information because they want to be able to reach you and keep you organized. They don't know that it's creating a profile.
Right. It's one of those, it comes up like with WhatsApp when you download it, Snapchat, Facebook even. Do you want to add those? I always did it no. I always hit no just because of who I am as a person. Like you don't need to have that info.
For sure.
But it's that classic thing that we do, that cybersecurity professionals deal with, is when you raise security, you lower convenience. But if you lower convenience or you increase convenience, you lower security.
Exactly.
And so what's at play right there, right, is the convenience would be having all my stuff in one spot. But the security goes down because it's all in one spot.
Yeah.
Versus if we increase the security, then all my stuff's not at one spot and the convenience goes down. And so at the end of the day, it's these big tech companies that will amass information, make a profile on you to market things to you. And that's where I would say there needs to be a better regulation, or I don't know what the right solution is, but there needs to be something done because it has polarized society, and social media and these tech companies, I would argue, are directly responsible for it because they've done it out of profit, but it has raged on how we have a community in America and elsewhere and how we view others even, I'd argue. So anyway,
that's without even getting into the aspect of bots or the social injection that happens with information that is just inserted into a conversation to steer it a certain way. You know, the information is being mined and it's being manipulated. So
100%. It's interesting to me. You joke about it with your friend groups, right? Where it's like, oh, we talked about it. Now we're going to have this. I was at my local watering hole and shooting the shit with a friend. And
I'm sorry, you're at a watering hole? Or is this the Lion
watering
King?
hole? I would call it some may call that a bar.
Okay, I got
so
you.
I was at a bar with my friends, and we were like just shouting these different things into the phone, like, oh, the cookie's gonna pick it up. And to be honest, I think some of it did. We were talking about,
Did you say the cookie's gonna pick it up?
Like, not the cookies pick it up, but like the whoever
your advertising ID,
that tracking cookie that is on your phone that no one deletes is now pushing towards maybe the database on that. And we were discussing Amazon, and what was hilarious is on my friend's phone, a notification for Amazon came up. And we were just like, what is going... Yeah, it's a little disturbing. But also, like, what are you going to do? And so that's what I was saying in terms of like the ad. Another way you could help lessen the profile building is if you simply go into your browser and delete all the cookies. Now, granted, this lowers your convenience because some of those things that are saved, like your login, will be deleted. So you'll have to log in again. So ideally, you'd know the password before doing that. But that is another way you can help yourself lower the ad tracking. Other thing too is on your phone. You can do that through your browser of choice as well, and it will delete those as well. Biggest thing is deleting browser history. I think is another thing that can help combat ad pushing and your tracking overall. I think the other problem too is like the GPS tracking on phones, but I don't know how you combat that or how you even begin to try to navigate that. Because so many apps require location now.
The solution to that is to not have a phone, but that's not what most people are going to do. If you want to ensure that you have no tracking, then you don't have one. Graphene OS is very good about giving you granular access to either the overall location services, like you can disable it completely, or you can disable it on a per app basis, which is really, really great. I mean, it's one of the reasons I've been loving it for the past couple weeks I've been using it. Is just, it can be a little overwhelming as far as how many options it gives you, but that's also the beauty of its customization that I like. But without rambling too much about that, you actually mentioned something a second ago that reminded me of a unicorn that we have in the cybersecurity space. And for anyone who doesn't know that term, a unicorn is something that increases security and it increases convenience.
What?
So I about maybe 7 or 8 months ago, I started looking into alternative password managers because I had a really bad experience in college where I was using 1Password, and that's not to knock on them. I know they run a great service now. I just I don't use that particular one, but I was using 1Password at the time, and for whatever reason, all of the login information that I had saved got deleted. It may have been user error. It may have been desync with my vault, and I was really, really upset when that happened because it's super inconvenient. But that platform is an option. Bitwarden is an option. There's a few of them out there. Obviously, the browsers are an option. You were talking about that a second ago, and the inconvenience of deleting everything. So I was wondering, do you use any password managers, and have those helped? Does that help you stay organized?
I am one of those people, and you're like super bad about it, but also it's a different way I go about it. Is I do use the same password for everything, but I change it every month to something slightly different or something different. Now, granted, probably not the best choice, but I'm pretty adamant about changing those passwords on like my social media, my email. The other part I also have too is that through my work, I have monitoring for identity theft. Through it's free.
Is it like LifeLock?
It's actually Allstate.
Allstate.
Surprisingly, I didn't know Allstate was in the business. One of the best ones I think out there is LifeLock, but also they got purchased by Norton. So, depending on your views of Norton, I'd be a little cautious
for sure.
Because from my understanding with Norton, unless they've upped their game, but the reason why I don't use their service anymore for like anti-spyware stuff on my computer is literally they don't actually get rid of it. They just quarantine it, and then as soon as you delete their service, then it's back for a virus or something. The service that I would say was really good for me was Legal Shield and I think it was like ID Shield. So it's one company. See if your employer will take them on so that you can just have like payroll deduction, but it gives you a lawyer that will write wills for you, and also like you pay $50 if you get a traffic ticket, they go to court for you regardless where you're at. So if you're traveling a lot and you get pulled over, then it's a simple, here, Legal Shield, take this on. The ID Shield part of it too is you log into all your accounts with them, and if there's any suspicious activity that occurs, and I see that notification, I change all my passwords. Period. And so that's how I personally do password management. I usually do it once a month, or I try to be adamant of having all my accounts in whatever ID monitoring service I'm using. And if there's some sort of breach or anything like that, I'm immediately changing the password. Because, again, I already get those emails that tell me, oh, we have some private information on you that we will share with your friends and family. Give me Bitcoin. Of course, they're from India. So, just like those kinds of scams and things of that sort.
Honestly, I just tell them that they can share it. I need all the publicity I can get.
We need to grow Rome's channel, damn it. Are you not going to help us with this campaign?
So speaking of that service, have you gotten your will created since we're in our middle age?
Working on that.
Oh, damn it. All right.
That is the one thing. Are you trying to get in my will? Is that the...
No, I was hoping you'd say, oh no, that's a long ways off, but apparently it's not.
Well, it's always good to do that. We're at the big thing fun fact, at 30 years old, you should get life insurance. And you're like, what do you need life insurance for? Because right now at 30, you don't have to go under a medical exam. And so when you turn 50 and 60 in your family, whatever your future hopes and aspirations may be, if it's one to start a family, you will have a better payout in the end, and you won't have to get a medical exam for it. Most employers have a life insurance policy, but it is recommended that you also get a private one.
Good to know.
But if you are 30 years old out there, listeners, look into life insurance. A lot of it's cheaper than you think. And it's one of those things that doesn't get talked about a lot of the time. And that's where I wish we actually had honest conversations about like retirement in our friend groups and life insurance. I have started to have those conversations with my own friends just for comparison's sake. It's kind of like the taboo of like talking about salaries. You should talk about salaries with your friends, not for the jealousy part or anything of that, but simply getting paid what you're worth, because employers will exploit you at the end of the day when it comes to pay.
No doubt, yeah.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
So
we can add that. We can add that on the board of ideas, talking about wills, retirements, things like that.
Yeah.
You can age me by 10 years during that podcast.
Wills, life insurance. I'm writing it down right now. Investment stuff.
Yeah, I think interesting.
I think that's the big problem with our generation when it comes to retirement. Is I definitely was in that mentality of COVID's killing us all, and I'm going to spend whatever I got. And now, as I look back on that, I'm like, the world continues no matter what the hell is going on. Life finds a way. And so you might as well have good retirement in place so that when you're not able to work, now granted, Rome has the fountain of youth and will forever be active.
Absolutely.
But if you are not one of those individuals,
keep telling myself that,
then we need to plan for retirement so that when you're not able to work anymore, don't want to work anymore, that you have systems in place that will keep you at the lifestyle that you're accustomed to, right? Whether it's $50,000 a year. Now, granted, that may not sound like a lot, but if you're retired and you have nothing else, and that not working gives you that income, you are killing it in retirement. Seriously. Because Social Security, to be honest, is helpful when it comes to medical health care. But for us in this generation of millennials, you got to have other plans. I look at those, my friends who are in retirement and what they get for Social Security. It's like $250 a month, bro. That is not going to buy anything by the time we retire. So plan for the future, get life insurance, talk to a financial expert, ideally a fiduciary, and we'll talk about it in another episode. So
that seems like very sound advice, and probably another rabbit hole I'll need to go down before we discuss it.
Right.
So I want to talk about a couple other things here, here's one that's pretty important, and that's phone usage. So not even applications or social media or anything like that, but specifically the security or privacy that you get with a SIM card. So to start off, I finally caved. I was using my new phone without a SIM for the past couple weeks, and I was getting tired of carrying two devices around. So I was like, I'm just gonna stick this bad boy in the next one. So now T-Mobile is tracking my every move.
Oh no!
So one of the big issues that people run into when it comes to phone security are SIM swap attacks. And basically what this is, you could have a bad actor. This is not something that's going to happen to you randomly, most likely. This is a very targeted attack. It's where someone calls your phone provider, your service provider, and suggests that the representative switch the eSIM to a phone that they have as a way to either monitor your communication or get access to your verification codes. So, unfortunately, the only thing between bad actors and your phone information is the representative at the company. So it's not something you can control. There are measures you can take, like you can reach out to T-Mobile and say, hey, don't ever take a SIM swap request over the phone, and it will still sometimes go through. This happened to Jack Dorsey, the former CEO of Twitter. His account was taken over because they gained access to his number. I think he was asleep at the time it happened. And so they were able to get into Twitter because they just sent the password reset verification codes to their own phone. Now, the easiest way to mitigate this is to just not use SMS, text messages to get your verification codes. But unfortunately, and ironically, some of the biggest institutions that we rely on only allow that option. So I'm talking like Chase, Bank of America, stuff where you're keeping your cash will only allow email or SMS verification. So what I want to ask you, Obee Won, is have you had any issues with either, or maybe not issues, but concerns with your SIM or phone security, or are there measures that you, or tips that you have in place as far as how to, I guess, better conceal that? Because I think one of the biggest problems, and this happened to us when we were young too, because we didn't know any better. You started with the social media, but our phone number has a lot of, I guess you could say, digital exhaust is a term I've heard thrown around. And phone numbers are expensive. They typically are strong, unique identifiers to us, and changing them is not very convenient. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this whole sort of subject.
It's interesting that you brought up, because I was thinking to myself, I was like, when isn't phone verification used? And I was like, well, shoot, even Hulu or Disney Plus, you don't even need a password. As long as you're logged into the device on your phone, right? I scan that QR code, I'm in. And I was like, I wonder where else this happens. I was like, that's every kind of account. Even for Microsoft, you don't even need to know your email password. As long as you get an email verification code to another email, you're all good. And so it's one of those things where I think they're trying to increase the convenience, but sadly is opening up new security threats that probably were not thought of, or maybe they were and they said, screw it, let's do it. I don't know how you combat that except for having it exclusively done through email. But even then, logging into an email, I'm thinking of Google, and this is where I ran into a problem when I lost my phone on the bus, of even to log into my email, I need a 2-step verification via phone. via tap saying this is me. How am I supposed to do that when I don't have said phone to locate my device? I sent a lengthy comment / phone call to Google like, this is ridiculous. I don't know how to change this, but there needs to be a better policy. Because now that I've noticed I've lost my, like, misplaced my phone in like my house, and I'm like, I don't want to do this digging look for it. Let me just hear the blaring sound. But now you can just log in with your password, for better or for worse. But I don't know what the right solution is to combating that, because again, you have Chase Bank. I'm even thinking of my chart, which is where all my medical records are held. That takes a two-step verification via either text or email. I don't know what the right solution is, except for maybe trying to push towards email, but then you're again still having that two-step verification from Google that also needs your phone. So I don't know if you have any solutions to that. I except for better password, changing your password often, and ideally, hopefully not setting up that two-step verification, but a lot of it is required nowadays.
So there are a couple solutions that come to mind. I'll give one that we have zero control over. It's just wishful thinking, and then I'll give another one that is somewhat actionable. So the first one, that in a perfect world, all of these companies would allow for two-step verification using a means other than phone. So I'm talking, if you want to use Google Authenticator, you can. If you want to use a different one, Aegis or Microsoft, any of those will do the job just fine. I think by default, having some form of second verification is a great security practice. But again, that depends on the platform itself to implement it. So not something we can control. The thing we can is, my rule of thumb, by default, if a platform allows for SMS verification, if that's the only option, I enable it, because it's better than just having a password. Passwords can be brute forced depending on the complexity or the length. You can get through a password anywhere from 30 seconds to 5 minutes. And obviously, as you increase complexity and use, there's techniques with passphrases and things like that where you can make it very, very difficult for a bad actor to access your information. But if passwords are there, what I'm trying to say is they're very easy to get through. They're the weakest layer. So if you have the option, enable the SMS. That's fine. It's better than nothing. But if it offers more things, like for example, Google gives you the option. That's a downside too. I'll get to that in a moment, but it gives you the option to not only do the tap, which you mentioned a second ago, but also use hardware security keys, which I really like. It also gives you the option to use the traditional authenticator route, so you get codes generated. But what's important to keep in mind is you don't want to do all of them. You only want to do the most secure one, because the more you do, the more attack vectors you create. You've basically generated new ways to sign in. So we can very quickly say that pretty objectively, the most secure way to do it is to use a hardware key, because someone would physically have to have it in order to get into your account. But getting TOTP, which is or I'll say OTP for simplicity, so one-time passwords, authentication codes, is a very secure way. It's not perfect, but it's more secure than SMS. And we can get into the whole logistics of SMS being just an insecure protocol to begin with, where people can intercept text. But besides that, as long as you have at least one of those things set up, you're good for the most part. You just need to make sure that your password is strong and that you have some form of second verification on there, and don't have more than that. And if it ever offers you something beyond SMS, don't use SMS. Use the alternative, because that will that will safeguard it better. Again, it's not as convenient, but like I mentioned before, if you have a good password manager, and I know things like Apple Keychain are really good, or if you trust Google, you can put it in Google, but I prefer to use third-party ones because then it gives me seamless access because I coach esports, so I'm on a PC all the time, but
Right.
I've had an iPhone for the longest time, and I do my work on a Mac when I'm out and about. So not being able to sync those different apps together can be a real pain. So when you use platform agnostic tools like that, it just makes life so much easier. It's more organized. And that way you can keep all of your passwords super unique. And for the service I use specifically, it generates reports similar to the one that you're talking about. So I'll know right away if something has been compromised and I can just quickly change it. So I would say use a manager to keep all that stuff organized and have MFA. It's better than nothing, but
Right.
it would be great if companies just changed it. That would be the ideal solution, I think.
So you mentioned like phones being, in a sense, like compromised now because they've been out there for so long. And it makes sense now, like reflect back on my even own phone number. I've had the same phone number since like 2008, right? And sometimes I'll get random texts from like an 866 number of, "Hey, we have a job.
You coming
that
to
you may
dinner
be
tonight?"
interested." You coming to dinner? Hey, what's up? And I'm like, delete.
Is this Julia?
Right. And sometimes I'm like, do I want to have a little fun tonight? Because I'm like, let's play this game. So I've had that happen once, and then they ended up cussing me out. It was really funny. But
Wait, so you messaged?
I engaged and just was giving them, excuse my language, bullshittery the whole time. I was like, well, I'm not sure I want to do that.
Oh, and then they got mad.
So got mad because, like, I need your personal information to save you.
Of course.
And so, but it happens via monitoring all the time, too. Like, I remember specifically when I studied abroad in Spain, my grandmother fell victim to someone saying, your grandson's in jail. Give us money so he can get out. And she couldn't get a hold of me because
I'd be willing to believe that. No, I'm kidding.
And so it was, well, it's one of those things where just you can't believe what's on. It's kind of like the 21 Pilots on, you can't believe what's on TV. And you can't even now, it kind of feeds into this distrust of anywhere you go, but you have to have I wouldn't say it's distrust, but a slight bit of caution when someone's telling you a tale, even especially when it's digital, regardless of in person, but especially if it's digital, of like, okay, you might be crying out for help, but this most likely is a scam. And it just sucks because if it wasn't like that and it was actually somebody in need, like that person's getting cut out of the scheme because of somebody else's malicious intents, you know? It's like the boy who cried wolf story and tale. So, but I like our solutions. It sounds like creating unique passwords, having them in a secure location that's a third-party app so it's seamless is great. Other suggestion is offering to get a service that monitors your accounts that you trust and whatnot. Again, big one I would support if I had to choose would be Legal Shield or ID Shield, because you can get a package deal for them. I had nothing but great service from them personally. And also, when selecting authentication, do not use the phone number. Use anything else. And so, I don't know if there's any other things you wanted to talk about today, Rome. You wanted to touch on privacy.
That's basically it. I mean, we could go down an endless rabbit hole, but it would be a 5-hour episode. So if there's other things that we want to follow up with here, I'm sure we could. And I'm glad we got that lead with the the retirement, the will, that stuff that we can possibly discuss later. But that's
100%.
That's really everything I wanted to cover for today. For now,
for sure. Yeah, and privacy, it's one of those things that I will leave for the audience that we need to, as a society, really look at how big tech companies are being held accountable for privacy, how our politicians are advocating or not advocating for us on our behalf, and really looking into that, because it is a growing field for bad actors to come and use your information to profit, from company wide to individual wide. And so that's like my big message for today is be cautiously optimistic, and that just implement good practices. Granted, it does change how you view the world and does change how you interact with the world, but it is for a better way of protecting your privacy. And ever since the Patriot Act, it's been on attack for privacy since then, under the guise of terrorism. And so, again, really just have to protect yourself out there. We gave some good examples of what to use, and can't wait to see what we talk about next time, whether it be wills, life insurance, some old people stuff, as they would say.
Oh, God.
Retirement that everyone should know.
Yeah.
I just said that to get you going, Rome.
Yeah. I know. And it worked.
And, yep. And see what other things we have. I'm thinking hopefully in the future in the show, we maybe bring some guest experts in those fields that we've talked about in the past, just to get a better gauge and get better opinions, because Rome and I are just two guys at the time that do our research, but we're not experts in the field per se. And so I feel like that'd be kind of a cool avenue to explore, is seeing how we could get some guests on our show to talk to you and be authentic with y'all listeners. So that is my final message. Be safe out there. And I don't know if Roma has any final words to say himself.
That's it. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Obee Won, thank you for good conversation and your insights. And we'll talk to you later.